The morning sun spilled softly over Little Rock, Arkansas, painting the city in hues of gold and amber. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew-soaked grass and blooming magnolias. On a quiet street lined with old oak trees, Sarah Huckabee Sanders sat at her kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee cradled in her hands. The house was still, save for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds outside. She stared at the newspaper in front of her, its headline bold and unyielding, "Local Politician Faces Criticism After Heated Exchange." Sarah's fingers tightened around the mug. Her heart felt heavy, like a stone sinking in a still pond. Sarah was no stranger to the spotlight. As a public figure, she had spent years navigating the choppy waters of politics, her words carefully chosen, her demeanor steady. But lately, the weight of scrutiny had grown heavier. Every statement, every gesture, seemed to spark a firestorm. She took a slow sip of coffee, the warmth spreading through her chest, and let her eyes drift to the window. The world outside moved at its own pace, calm, unhurried, indifferent to the storm brewing inside her. Across town, in a small apartment filled with books and framed photos, Jasmine Crockett sat at her desk, her laptop glowing softly. The room was cozy, with a worn leather chair and a potted fern in the corner. Jasmine's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her mind racing. She had always been a truth-teller, someone who spoke from the heart, even when it ruffled feathers. Yesterday's public meeting had been no exception. Her words, sharp and clear, had cut through the room like a blade, exposing what she saw as hypocrisy in Sarah's recent statements. The crowd had buzzed, the cameras had flashed, and now the moment was plastered across every news outlet in the state. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. She hadn't meant to start a fire, but she couldn't stay silent. Not when she believed the truth was at stake. Still, doubt crept in, soft and insidious. Had she gone too far? Had her words wounded more than they healed? She closed her laptop and stood, pacing the room, her footsteps muffled by the rug. Outside, the city hummed with life, unaware of the quiet battle unfolding within her. Sarah set the newspaper down and rubbed her temples. The article recounted the meeting in vivid detail. Jasmine's pointed remarks, Sarah's flushed cheeks, the gasps from the audience. Sarah hadn't expected the confrontation. She prided herself on her composure, her ability to stay calm under pressure. But Jasmine's words had struck a nerve, unearthing a truth Sarah hadn't wanted to face. She had spoken about integrity, about fairness, but Jasmine had called her out, accusing her of bending those values for political gain. The accusation stung because, deep down, Sarah wondered if there was truth to it. She stood and walked to the living room, where a family photo hung on the wall. Her husband and children smiled back at her, their faces full of warmth. Sarah's heart ached. She wanted to be the person they believed in, a leader, a mother, a woman of principle. But the world of politics was a labyrinth of compromises, and sometimes she felt lost in it. She traced the edge of the photo frame with her finger, her thoughts drifting to the meeting. Jasmine's voice had been steady, her eyes fierce with conviction. Sarah envied that clarity, that unshakable sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Jasmine stood by her apartment window, watching the morning unfold. A jogger passed by, a dog barked in the distance, and the world carried on. She thought of her own family, her parents, who had taught her to speak up for what was right, no matter the cost. But the cost was real. She had seen the hurt in Sarah's eyes at the meeting, the flicker of vulnerability beneath her polished exterior. Jasmine hadn't wanted to humiliate her. She had only wanted to hold a mirror to the truth. Now, though, she wondered if that mirror had shattered something fragile. The day passed slowly, each woman caught in her own thoughts. Sarah drove to her office, the radio off, the silence amplifying her unease. She passed familiar landmarks, the state capitol, the riverfront park, each one grounding her in the city she loved. Yet the weight of the morning's headline followed her, a shadow she couldn't shake. At her desk, she opened her laptop, intending to draft a response to the article, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself replaying Jasmine's speech, each syllable echoing in her mind. Jasmine, too, felt the day stretch on. She met with colleagues, attended a community event, and smiled through it all, but her thoughts kept circling back to Sarah. She wondered what Sarah was feeling: anger, shame, defiance. Jasmine had always believed in the power of words to spark change, but now she questioned their impact. Had she pushed Sarah away from understanding, or had she planted a seed of reflection? The uncertainty gnawed at her, soft but persistent. That evening, the city glowed under a blanket of stars. Sarah sat on her porch, a glass of iced tea sweating in her hand. The air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and earth. She closed her eyes, letting the sounds of the night, crickets, a distant car, wash over her. She thought of her father, a man who had faced his own share of criticism in politics. He had once told her, "People don't change from being shouted at. They change when they're heard." The memory settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time that day, she felt a flicker of clarity. Jasmine, too, found herself outside, sitting on a bench in a small park near her apartment. The moonlight cast soft shadows on the grass, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. She pulled her jacket tighter, her mind still tangled in the day's events. She thought of her grandmother, a woman who had faced injustice with quiet strength. "Speak the truth," she had said, "but leave room for grace." Jasmine realized she had spoken the truth, but perhaps she had left little room for grace. The thought softened her, like a knot slowly unraveling. The next morning brought an unexpected twist. Sarah, still wrestling with her thoughts, decided to reach out. She didn't want to write a press release or make a public statement. Those felt hollow, rehearsed. Instead, she picked up the phone and called Jasmine. Her hands trembled as the line rang, but she steadied herself. When Jasmine answered, her voice was cautious, guarded. "Jasmine, it's Sarah," she said, pausing to let the words settle. "Can we talk? Just the two of us?" Jasmine was taken aback. She had expected silence, perhaps a cold rebuttal through the media. But this, a personal call, felt different. She hesitated, then agreed. They arranged to meet at a small cafe downtown, a neutral space with soft lighting and the comforting aroma of fresh coffee. The meeting wasn't a debate or a showdown. It was a conversation, tentative at first, like two people stepping carefully across a frozen lake. The cafe was quiet, save for the clink of cups and the low murmur of conversation. Sarah arrived first, choosing a corner table by a window. She wore a simple blouse, her hair pulled back, her usual polish softened by the weight of the moment. Jasmine arrived moments later, her expression wary but open. They ordered coffee, the ritual grounding them, giving their hands something to do. Sarah spoke first, her voice low, deliberate. "I've been thinking about what you said at the meeting. It hurt, but I needed to hear it." She paused, her eyes meeting Jasmine's. "I don't always see the gaps between what I say and what I do. But I want to." Jasmine listened, her guard softening. She saw the sincerity in Sarah's eyes, the vulnerability she hadn't expected. "I didn't mean to attack you," Jasmine said, her voice steady but gentle. I see things that don't add up, and I can't stay quiet. But maybe I could have said it differently." The conversation unfolded slowly, like a river finding its course. They spoke of their values, their struggles, the pressures of public life. Sarah admitted to moments of compromise, times when she had chosen strategy over principle. Jasmine shared her fear of silence, of letting injustice pass unchallenged. They didn't agree on everything, but they listened. And in that listening, something shifted, a quiet understanding, fragile but real. As they left the cafe, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the city. Sarah felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted, even if just a little. Jasmine felt a spark of hope, a sense that truth could build bridges as well as break walls. They didn't walk away as friends, but they walked away with respect, a shared sense that words could wound, but they could also heal. Back at home, Sarah sat at her kitchen table again, the newspaper now folded away. She picked up a pen and began to write. Not a statement for the press, but a letter to herself, a reminder of who she wanted to be. Jasmine, too, returned to her apartment, opening her laptop not to draft a speech, but to journal her thoughts, capturing the lessons of the day. The city moved on, its rhythm steady and unchanging. But for Sarah and Jasmine, something had changed. They had faced the weight of their words, the power of truth, and the possibility of grace. And in that quiet moment of connection, they found a path forward. Not perfect, but honest, and grounded in the hope that understanding could grow, even in the hardest of conversations.